2024, ladies and gentlemen, has been a coming of age year for India's startup ecosystem in many ways. I think there has been, of course, a course correction where India's startups have realized the value and the potential of fiscal discipline. There's also been a convergence between public market valuations and private market valuations in many ways. And the IPO story has really given legitimacy and currency to India's startup ecosystem. So without further ado, let me talk to some of those who are part of the story and are really the flag bearers of taking this forward. Upasana, I'm going to come to you first. And guys, we do have to give a big round of applause to Upasana for what the team has managed to do with MobiKwik and the IPO.
I think the listing was definitely an arduous journey. I think not many people know, but we actually filed for the IPO at the beginning of 2024, and it took us an exact 12 months to get it done. So while I was very excited and happy for all my friends and, Alo getting it done before me, I was also a little jealous कि यार इनका इतना फास्ट हो रहा है, हमें इतना टाइम क्यों लग रहा है. But I think the main thing was, as usual, keep hustling, keep trying and not giving up. So solve through the problems. I think it has been a difficult year for the fintech sector, given a little bit of extra caution on the regulatory side. But having gotten it done, I feel a little bit of validation. Everyone having told me that payments में पैसा नहीं बनेगा, profitable नहीं हो पाओगे, कुछ नहीं बन पाएगा. So I do feel a little better about that. But other than that, life goes on. It's all the same, and it's the next growth journey.
Well, I remember you expressing very vocally your frustration with the fact that it was taking so long for you to actually get the approvals in place to go IPO. But I want to understand from you, what is the argument that paisa nahi banega, profitability nahi hogi, growth kahan se aayegi? What has changed? What has enabled the story to change to your mind? And what do you believe will be the growth levers from here on to build on the momentum that you're already seeing? What is the headroom for growth from here?
See, the headroom for growth is immense. I think that the payments market in India still has a long way to go because of the entire population. Still only 450 million Indians are actively transacting. So that market is going to double. And when it comes to all the other distribution products on the financial services side, which all of us payment platforms do, there the penetration levels are still less than 10%. So the growth is simply coming. Right now, payments is growing very rapidly for us, payments across all vectors. And we've become the largest wallet now in India. We're growing rapidly on UPI also. But I think for me, the most important thing is to do it sustainably and not like 1 year XX growth hai and second year, growth nahi hai. And so I think we are just trying to work with a moderate 40-50% growth every year and at the same time be very careful about the bottom line.
Prachi, let me come to you now. Your journey began in 2016. On the back of what you've just heard from Upasana, I want to hear from you. What's the bull case? What are you working towards? What has changed in India that you're betting?
So, at PayGlocal, we focus on solving for cross-border payments. So, from a, macroeconomic indicators perspective, of course, India GDP continues to grow, which means Indian consumers are going to participate more onto global payments. Indian merchants are seeing a lot of uptick in terms of international consumers transacting with them on, from a cross-border perspective. A lot of Indian brands are going global. As you rightly mentioned, a lot of investments happening in D2C brands who have started from India and they will kind of go global. With the current regulatory environment in India, there are only a few global players serving the Indian ecosystem when it comes to cross-border payments. There is no Indian fintech solving for the cross-border needs of the country. And given we are incorporated in India and building for the Indian ecosystem to begin with, I think it puts us in a very good advantageous points where we are able to create products which are for India. It's not a copy-paste of global products by the global companies who are selling the same product to the Indian consumer or the merchant ecosystem. So I think that's what we've been investing on, and I think it's been a great run.
But let me ask you now on what the outlook is for ACCO over the next few years. What are you betting on? I know everyone's betting on an IPO at this point in time, and you included. So how soon? 2025 or 2026?
I shall say time will tell. But I'm very happy to be here in this gathering. I like the fact that insurance is sleepy space. Nobody here. Everybody wants
Is
to.
it really that sleepy?
Everybody wants to do payments and lending, so I'm happy that nobody wants to do insurance. But yeah, it's one of those.
Why
stories-
really that's the case?
I don't know. I'm happy. Everybody wants to do payments and lending. I'm quite happy. But frankly, I think insurance has always been for a while now. It's been a sunrise sector. It continues to grow. It's probably not even in India. I think globally, it's one of the last bastions that fintech has really tried to break through. So somewhere I feel privileged, blessed that I've had a 6-7 year journey on this, and hopefully ahead of the curve. I think business will continue to grow. I think there are many more Accos to be built in India.
What will it take to build many more Accos in India? I mean, just for the insurance sector, for instance, it continues to be grossly underpenetrated. And of course, we now have a fairly dynamic mix as far as regulation is concerned. The regulator has also been fairly active in the insurance space. But what will it take to build many more Accos?
I think it's critical for all of us to understand it's the youngest regulator, if I may say so, and also the youngest sector. There was no IRDA till 2001.
Yeah.
Because there was only an LIC and a New India that would serve us. So it's maturing as a regulator. I do believe that IRDA won't be far behind in terms of whether it's SEBI or RBI in terms of unleashing growth for the sector. I think it's still a sector slightly behind how young the sector is,
Yeah.
and how young the regulator also is.
Yeah.
But I think the inflection point has happened. So I'm quite excited.
You know, you said that the inflection point has already happened. So I want to pick up from where Upasana left off. What's the kind of growth that you're working with? What's the assumption? I mean, what is your modest number?
I was like suddenly questioning my own ability and my entire company's ability, because I haven't even IPO'd and I'm still struggling with 50% or 40%. I think 30 would be good. I'd be very happy. We're a balance sheet business, so I'm very happy with 30% year on year if we could do that.
Let me come to you because, second time proved to be lucky as far as the IPO is concerned. But IPO out of the way, what's the big India growth story that has really enabled the business to grow as it has? And what are the shifts or the trends that you're going to be focusing on, not just in 2025, but from here on?
I think in the early phase of online travel, I think companies were just trying to copy the Western model, launch with flights, go for hotels. But if you look at how many Indians actually fly, it's less than 4% of the population, right? So if you're trying to build a large online travel play, you got to go into the tier 2, 3, 4 markets, serve trains, buses, etc. Harder to build. It took like more than a decade to build out, but and harder to monetize as well. But I think our story kind of proves that you can build a large, viable, profitable business on a very large base of customers, right? Which probably will take longer, will need more patient capital to support it. But the good news is that people from Lucknow, Indore, Jaipur, they're coming and spending, and the share of wallet is growing year on year. So there's no letdown in the travel space. I keep hearing of slowdown, etc., but we're like, there's no slowdown. We are doing a modest 40% GTV growth as of the last reported quarter.
I want to understand from each one of you here, anybody who is building from India for the world.
95% of our revenue comes from outside of the country, largely millions of users across the world. We are also the category leader in our category, and I bet my life that we are the most differentiated product. We are a video creation software. And in the last 6, 7, 8 months, what we have seen is a bunch of American companies copying us. And it's just a very delightful thing to happen to an Indian company. I largely feel that we are somewhere caught with a disease of copying and like
You mean we are caught with the disease of copy?
Yeah.
Okay.
copying and taking inspiration from American companies and American models. And I think that needs to change. And that is what actually also makes us one of the fastest growing AI companies, because it's truly differentiated.
So what did
purpose-built.
you do different so that you're now having global companies copy what you do as opposed to the other way around?
I think it comes really down to picking a segment and then having an insight that brings in a large enough change for them to switch. So without that level of atomic insight, and why something should drastically change where people start adopting, that can't happen. I think most people don't work hard enough to get to that insight, and copying becomes an easier answer.
Sambhav, let me come to you now with what has changed as far as your business is concerned, what you believe have been the critical enablers, and more importantly, the kind of appetite you have for risk and for growth from here on.
At Fampe, we believe that everybody else is building for the affluent market. Everybody wants to build for the rich people who are 35 and above, 40 and above. We believe the next growth, India is a very young nation, right? Majority of our population is below 30. We want to build for the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha. And and the kind of products that the Gen Alpha and Gen Z needs, and this year marks the start of Generation Beta as well,
Yes.
right?
But I'm feeling very, very old, even as you rattle off all of that. So
So the kind of products that the next generation wants to use, it's very different. The kind of designs they interact with, like just to share a small anecdote, one of our employees has a 2-year-old daughter, and she picks up a magazine and she tries to zoom in the image.
yeah,
By-
because they're so used to living on a
Yeah.
mobile phone. Yeah.
So the expectations that they have from interacting with different kind of products is very different. And we believe that whenever we are talking about the next 500 million users on the internet, next billion users on the internet, the majority of them are going to come from this generation. And the pattern on how when they start to earn, it's changing a lot with internet and democratization that internet has provided. Kids are starting to create their own content, become Instagram influencers. So the next generation, how they spend money, how they interact with money, it's going to be very different. We believe that we have the opportunity to actually be the flag bearer on how they interact with their money.
Okay.
And we want to build everything that is possible to improve their relationship with money. And we have started with
What about your relationship with money?
still working on it.
How hard is that? Is it complicated?
It's a situationship. It depends.
It's a situationship. By when do you hope it'll turn into a relationship?
Yeah, it keeps changing. I think for me as a first time entrepreneur, starting very early, right out of college, the kind of exposure I've gotten with this entrepreneurial journey, I'm very grateful. And the kind of experiences you get, you keep on evolving much faster. So even today, I feel the company is 10 steps ahead of us and we are behind. We have to catch up with the company, right? So yeah, let's see where my relationship goes.
May your situationship convert into a relationship sooner than later. But Kunal, are you in a complicated situationship, relationship? How are things going for you?
Well, we're in fintech.
So it's always complicated.
Yeah, I think complicated is our middle name. But no, I think there's been massive evolution. We are running a financial services platform for Indians, helping them with lending, insurance, savings, and UPI. So we work with all the regulators. We are heavily regulated with licenses from all the regulators. So obviously life is, I would say, busy. We spend a lot of time thinking about the business very differently from how we used to think about it, let's say about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the massive difference is that the intervention of regulators has also increased trust in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
That's been a big silver lining. And we see a huge amount of growth now coming outside of tier 1 cities. So we operate in about 1,200 plus cities, like 98% of India's pin codes, 19,000 plus pin codes. And the amount of growth we are seeing outside the top 50 cities
Yeah.
is just phenomenal. So in terms of volume, it's beating the top 20 cities.
Is there room for everybody? Even if we see segmentation, verticalization, and specialization, is there room for everybody?
Well, I would say that there is room for legitimate businesses to come and solve a real problem,
Yeah.
but also be sustainable.
Pallavi, take me through what you're focusing on and what your belief is in terms of the potential to grow the business from here on. And what the ask is essentially, and I know everyone's going to, I'll get Shweta to collate together what the feedback is from startups that have been speaking through the day on what the ask is of the government and the regulator. But let me ask you, Pallavi, of how you see your business evolving from here.
So we are into
funding the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And these are based in tier 2, tier 3 towns of India. If you look at the numbers, we know 63 million MSMEs contributing heavily to GDP. Today, Mr. Kant spoke about, if we have to get to the vision of Viksit Bharat, the GDP has to grow 9x in the next 22 years. So that's the focus, and the entire GDP moves through this retail economy. So our focus, when we think about MSME, we think about a manufacturing unit, right? We focus on the trading ecosystem, which are the shopkeepers, retailers, distributor economy. These are the customers who are the core engine of driving the GDP forward, right? And if they don't grow, I think we cannot think about the dream of making the developed India we talk about.
Yeah.
So that's a very important segment, huge focus for the government. We have done close to 30,000 crores of financing so far. And for us, the focus right now is how do we really do the right thing, because it's not just about giving credit.
Yeah.
The segment that we are focusing on needs a lot of capacity building, lot of digitization.
Yeah.
If these companies can be digitized, they can be formalized, credit will be easily accessible.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of credit so much, it's a question of how they structure their businesses better, how they digitize. So our focus is on that direction.
Right.
I think as we think about the growth of this sector, very important that this sector is being recognized as priority sector.
Yeah.
So when we think, when banks look at this sector, if they have 70% priority sector contribution, they get certain kind of rebates, benefits. For NBFCs like us, we don't have that, right? In order for these retail companies to actually become and qualify as priority sector, they need to have something called as Udyam Aadhar.
Right.
But our point is that, even without that, they're already in that turnover range where they do qualify for priority sector. So I think the ask is that, as we think about focus into this segment,
Yeah.
there is a lot more to be done. Government is anyway pushing. I think the budget, I'm sure we are going
Yeah.
to have a lot more coming up on the MSME segment. I think it's just about executing it on the ground. And we as fintechs who are focused on
Yeah.
MSME payments, MSME credit are the engines to drive it. So I think our request would be to look at how we can scale this sector by better policies, debottlenecking some of the regulatory issues. So
Well, that has been the promise that the chief economic advisor has made as a sort of look into possibly what the economic survey will say, that deregulation, debottlenecking is the theme likely this year. But Jitendra, let's address the issue of scale. Let's also address the issue of speed. And to address the untapped market, so to speak, to address the underpenetrated market, so to speak, what do you believe is the need of the hour to get that additional 1 billion on board across different categories and different segments?
So that's a tough question you're asking me in the last, but I think if you look at it, like each of our businesses is growing because of the macro factors for sure, and we have to give credit to that because especially in financial services, which most of us are in, if you look at the last 5 years when the GDP grew from $1,500 to $2,600, this additional 1,000 incremental dollar has created like at least $200 billion of value, the new value which has been created. And if we believe that the Prime Minister's vision, which is the GDP should grow 10x from here by 2047, even if you do a simple multiplication, while there is an exponential effect you get when every $1,000 you get, it's not $200. With every $1,000 you get at least $500 billion of value being created. So from that standpoint, the market itself will support the growth. That being said, the regulatory for sure. So I think the startups are known for innovation, and innovation means finding the areas where nobody has chartered.
Yes.
And if nobody has chartered, that means the rules were not written in the manner in which the startups are assuming, or the rules are not written, assuming the new business models. So from that standpoint,
Regulation always keeps pace with innovation. Innovation always ahead of regulation.
I mean, if you look at it, let's say whether the Uber or Ola would have ever come, if the rules were written that the taxi should have operated in certain fashion. The rules were never written like that. So that's how the new models came in, and then the rules were made. I think the startups also, in my view, will operate that way, where they will define new rules or new ways of doing business. So from that standpoint, the regulators would need to catch up to support this growth. So I feel it's the government's focus and enabling the innovation would clearly support the growth.
Well, what rules are you willing to break, Shruti, at this point in time? Clearly not regulatory rules, but rules in being able to address markets and break the status quo, as Varun was pointing out.
So again, coming from fintech and lending in unsecured, I don't think this is a platform to talk about taking any regulation. I think every second page talks about unsecured lending.
Yes,
So
you're the red flag everybody's warning us about.
absolutely, absolutely. But one of the things which I would want from the government is to think about financial inclusion, which is a big part of our building the company. We've had 30 lakh customers, and with rate caps coming in, cost of compliance going up, serving the underserved, the underbanked becomes slightly harder. But as we want to get the next billion in, it becomes very, very important to get them in the fold.
Absolutely. And I think that's the overarching mission and vision as far as the government is concerned. Upasana, I'm going to ask you to come back to us. Really, as I said, 2024 has in many ways also brought together the public markets and the private markets. There's been a legitimacy as far as the Indian startup story is concerned from a public market point of view. Through your own experience now, what do you believe this convergence is going to result in? I mean, we've got a bunch of IPOs in the pipeline. 2025 is expected to be an even bigger year. This convergence, the kind of value unlock that it opens up, your thoughts?
So I think that it's not just about 2024. I think that last couple of years, we've seen that the markets have been correcting, both in the private side. I mean, if you think about it, we did some research to see no large deals only have happened. And not just in India. I mean, even large global players like Klarna had to take a bit slash down when they raised money a few years back, right? Post-COVID. So I think correction has been happening in the valuations. And I think that it has also brought this whole attention to reaching profitability, growing profitably in the entire mindset of the founders in India, which I think is a new thing. I think other than that, people were not so focused because there was so much supply of private capital.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to make better companies now in India, because long term, I think this convergence is going to come in both on the private and the public side. Finally, see, M&A has not been at a scale.
Yeah.
M&A has not really been the big way of exiting in India like US or other markets. So going public has been a path that we have seen many new age companies follow in 21, and 24 has been again a good year. In our own sector in fintech, I can tell you that we have tried very hard to create a positive path for all the other fintechs behind us so that they can also, get into the liquidity of capital markets. So I think it's a great thing. I think the sentiment from the founders side is improving to reach profitable growth numbers. The sentiment from the public market investors is improving towards new age companies. I do hope that in the next 5 years, you will see at least 50 to 70 new age companies get listed. And I do believe that it will become a inflection point of another order for the growth of startups in India.
Absolutely. I would imagine that is something to look forward to, and perhaps we could see that number, emerge over the next 5 years. Anybody else here who's looking at the IPO market, Sanket, is that going to be something that you look at some point, in the future? It's on, go ahead.
I think personally, I'll want to hold off to an IPO, and I think our current revenue is IPO ready, but I'll want to hold it off for as long as we can.
What are the key pain points, the key friction areas that continue to exist that require the government's attention and the regulators' attention? The top 5 areas that need focus and attention.
Well, thanks, Shireen. I think for us at the Startup Policy Forum, we have our hands full. And if today was any indication, at Startup Baitak, we had about 8 sessions since the morning where we collated a number of policy issues that are important to the startup ecosystem. And let me start by telling you that this year is going to be transformative on the policy front. Just look at how the year has begun. We've already got the AI governance framework from MeitY out, which we are working towards the submissions. We've already got the data privacy rules out again. So that's going to be a big one, and data privacy will impact each one of the startups here that we see around us. We had Shruti talk about unregulated lending. There is a bill on unregulated lending that is again awaiting submissions. We have the budget round the corner. Today's conversations were more about, I think, understanding that our startups have now reached the size and scale that they want to play an active role in policy making.
They need to have a voice. They need to be heard.
Absolutely. And I think what's most important is that that realization is at both ends. So there is going to be tons of policy making inputs that the government requires. And, they heard it right from Dr. Shamika Ravi, who's the, member to the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. They heard it from Mr. Amitabh Kant.
Yeah.
They've heard it from every single policy maker who came to Startup Better, that the government wants to hear from startups more. And they're willing to make changes. They're willing to actually understand what startups need. So I think what we have right now is the startup ecosystem being really at an inflection point. We're
Yeah.
looking at Startup 2.0 in some ways, 9 years of Startup
Yes,
India.
of startup.
Are we
yeah.
now at the stage where we can bring those transformative policies that will take it to the next level? So tons of work ahead.
And
should be.
budget specifically, anything in the budget that you've put forward to the finance minister?
Tons, including ESOP taxation, our pre-budget.
Which has been on the table for a while now.
Well, we do hope that we think that the corridors of power are very, very open to what we are going to be suggesting. And I will say that our pre-budget consultation goes in this week.
Okay.
But you'll be the first to know.
Well,
Shruti.
thank you very, very much. It took many years for the angel tax to finally be axed. So I hope it takes less time for the ESOP taxation to be resolved. But thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen.